everybody. Welcome to the Abroaders Travel Podcast, your weekly meetup with thousands of entrepreneurs, hustlers, creators, nomads, ninjas, wanderers, and world changers, all seeking to build the skills and connections to live a life without borders. If you want to learn more about what we do or download our entire podcast archive, check out the website, abroaders.com. Happy Wednesday morning, and welcome to another episode of the Abroaders Podcast. This is number 135. Today is Wednesday, August 10th, and I am checking in from Grand Ledge, Michigan with AJ in Harbert, Michigan. How's it going, AJ?
It's going very well, man. How's Grand Ledge?
It's good. I'm in the back of our co-founder Jake's workroom at his parents' house right now. We've been jamming out. It's about 2:30 in the morning here as we're recording, and Jake and I have been at it for like 10 hours working on some pretty cool stuff. So hopefully you guys don't take it personally. I'm definitely super excited to talk with all of you, but I got to keep it a little bit quiet so nobody comes in and yells at me for waking the whole house up.
Understandable. You are so polite, man. Have you been tuning into the Olympics?
I have. Honestly, man, it feels a little bit like I'm like missing my firstborn child's like national championship game right now. Like I love Brazil so much, and it's been just such a huge part of my life for the last like 5-6 years. To not be there during the Olympics is kind of killing me, man.
Man, I feel the exact same way when I see the shots and when they talk about different neighborhoods or Brazilian athletes from Rio and they talk about where they're from, and just, having been to those places, knowing those places, having friends there, seeing on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter some Brazilian friends that are enjoying the games. I'm definitely feeling a little bit of pain about that, but it's been really cool. The opening ceremony I thought was fantastic. It was. I feel just much more relevant than a lot of them. I remember watching the Beijing opening ceremonies. It was so abstract. It was too bogus and artistic for me. It wasn't the one in Rio. I felt was quite a bit about Brazil, and I know the Brazilians were quite proud. They were not super thrilled about the Olympics before, but they were happy with the opening ceremony and proud that it went off really well. They showcased Brazilian culture. And they were pretty honest about some of the issues that Brazil is having as well. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that as well. I also kind of I've watched a lot of Olympics over the last 15 years or so, but I didn't really realize the opening ceremony was that much of a production. So I definitely enjoyed it. And it seems like sort of the type of thing that Brazilians are just well adapted to pull off extremely well. It's like, they practice stuff like that kind of grandiose production every year. They do something, with all these costumes and all this preparation for Carnival. And it just seems like something that they were just so well adapted to have the right people, the right artists, folks that could bring in music and other parts of Brazilian culture and make it work. And, it seems like from what I've heard that they did it on quite a bit less of a budget than some of the other countries in recent Olympics. So I think it came off really well, and I'm just super happy that there hasn't been any major issues or any big problems with the Olympics so far.
Yeah, I hear you. Man, as far as the actual athletes go in the competition, have you followed this thing with the American swimmer and her Russian rival? Have you caught any of that? I don't know. You could call it controversy, or it's a little bit of a story.
Is it Kladecki or something like that? Yes.
Yeah. So this is very, very Cold War U.S. versus Soviets. So for those that don't know, there's a Russian swimmer who's very good, but has also been caught 2 times using performance-enhancing drugs, aka steroids or doing blood doping, just essentially breaking the rules and cheating. And the American was not shy about calling her out. And actually tonight, she beat the Russian. She won the gold. The Russian took the silver. And so that was pretty cool because this girl did a little bit of smack talking, but rightfully so. She was trying to be a good ambassador of the spirit of the Olympics. And, it's about honest competition, not about cutting corners. And the Russians have been, the Russians can't even compete in track and field because there's such a systemic issue with doping, and the Paralympians, the Russians can't even compete because it was just so rampant, the performance enhancing drugs and essentially cheating. So that was pretty cool to see her win, and she's young, man. She's like 19, I think.
Yeah.
I think she's 19 years old.
I saw her qualify last night for the final, and I couldn't believe she was like an entire body length ahead of the world record that she had set like 2 days earlier. Just like completely on top of her game. Super cool. I do have to say, I feel bad for like somewhere out there's like a Russian person that's been playing it straight, like an athlete that's been doing everything right. And, that just must be the worst thing ever to be like caught in all this bullshit and just being brought down by a whole bunch of people that are just, undermining every bit of credibility that you've been working so hard for. I'm sure there's some people that have been walking the straight and narrow and are really, really frustrated right now by the whole situation there.
Yeah, that's got to be a pretty big bummer. I'm not sure how things wrapped up, but it looked like the Russian men gymnastics team is maybe going to win a medal, and they haven't done that in a while. So the Russians have a little bit to cheer about.
Cool, man. So for the rest of the show today, we've got some new One World routes that got announced by Air Berlin. I want to talk about what that potentially means, especially for travel between the U.S. and Europe. We've also got a SPG transfer opportunity that we talked a little bit about last week, but AJ and we gave this a little bit more thought on what we should do. So we'll kind of share what we ended up deciding and some of the factors that went into the decision. Also just recently booked some flights to Colombia. We're going to be reconvening down there for the rest of the fall. And so had some kind of interesting process of looking for those tickets. I think it came out really well. So we can share a little bit of information about kind of how that worked out. And then last but not least, we're going to touch on the United devaluation. Lots of you have probably heard that United's making some rule changes. That's definitely going to undermine some of the best opportunities, at least with respect to round trip awards where you're taking advantage of stopovers and they're open jaw. They're going to be a lot more restrictive. We're not going to get super into detail. I think that probably makes sense to do a whole show about United coming up soon here and really get into it. But definitely just give some of the overview of what's going on so you can start thinking about it. And we'll have some links in the show notes to kind of go to school and understand what's going on with the United changes.
Yeah, man. Well, let's jump into this Starwood and American thing. So here's the deal. You can get an extra 20% American Airlines points when you transfer your SPG points there. This promotion runs through September 14th. And so this 20% bonus you get along with that 25% transfer bonus for every 20,000 SPG points you move to an airline. So for example, you got 20,000 SPG points, you move them to American. Normally you'll get 25,000 points because of that 25% bonus, but we've got an additional 20% right now. So this is a pretty cool promotion.
Definitely tempting. So we took a look at our SPG balance here, and I think this is definitely different if you have a lot of SPG points. And I know at least a lot of the people that we're connected with on Award Wallet or that are using the Abroaders app, some of the beta testers have a lot of SPG points. So I think it makes sense, like if you know that you're going to be redeeming some American miles sometime in the next year and you've got enough SPG to leave yourself substantial points to be able to transfer elsewhere, this is an awesome opportunity. For us, we've got only 38,800 SPG points. So number one, we actually kind of fell asleep at the wheel. We should definitely put a little bit of extra spending on our Starwood cards so we have 2 units of 20,000 to transfer and get 2 bonuses. But ultimately, we sort of decided that we're going to hold off on this.
It just doesn't make sense for us considering our other points balances and like Eric said, the scarcity of our SPG points. And we're sitting on around, 70 or 80,000 American Airlines miles. So if we both wanted to take a flight somewhere in economy, we could get that done one way. And like I said, considering our Amex balance, our Citi balance, and just a lot of other things put together, we're in no shortage of having flights. So those SPG points are worth quite a bit to us, and it's probably best that we just let them sit tight there because we still got a 25% transfer bonus in the future after we put a little bit of spending. And like Eric said, get to 2 units of 20,000 to take advantage of those. So we're going to hold off on this. But like Eric said, if you've got a lot of Starwood points and you're poor with American miles, pretty good opportunity.
Yeah, the other thing that is at least worth mentioning, and there's still sort of some speculation, not a ton of information out, but Barclays did a deal with American Airlines. So it's no longer going to be Citi that's exclusively issuing cards that have sign-up bonuses for American Miles. We don't really know when those products are going to come out or when the first sign-up offers are going to be available. Probably sometime early 2017. But that's something that I think sort of should factor into the decision, especially if you don't have that many Starwood points. In our situation, we've got enough American Miles. We can do at least one trip. Both of us get a one-way, and that should tide us over until there's potentially some opportunity with Barclays. Whereas with Starwood, unless you stay at Starwood hotels all the time or just have a huge amount of spend, it's pretty hard to earn those SPG points. And so just being able to sort of weigh like, well, if in January we can get 100,000 Barclays issued American Miles, then we're going to probably really wish we had hung on to those Starwood points. And I guess the other one, the biggest transfer partner that I think is a sort of a sleeper with Starwood is Alaska. And right now, Alaska, the Bank of America card has a 30,000 point offer for really low spend. I think it's 1,000 spend for the personal card and for the business card. So if you get those two applications, you've got 60,000 points. 70,000 will get you a one-way on Cathay Pacific with Alaska Miles, and you get a stopover on that one-way. So I think there's some sort of that's maybe the alternate thing that you might want to do with the Starwood points, and is potentially a reason to not take advantage of the American transfer bonus.
Yeah, one final thing on the Barclays thing with AA that's interesting. What I've read is that it will be Barclays and Citi will both issue cards with bonuses of American Airlines miles, and you'll earn American miles when you spend. What I've heard is that Citi is going to own the digital stuff. So Citi will be what you will find on the internet, and Barclays will be that card that when you're on a flight, the flight attendant may mention, or the person at the kiosk in the airport. And I'm assuming at I don't know, the other places, but Barclays, it looks like that's going to be an offline thing. So that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, it'd be strange to see I can't imagine that they're not going to be issuing new cards with sign-up bonuses, at least available somewhere online. So certainly worth checking out. I think there's a really good chance that when this happens, the other thing, Barclays doesn't really have that many products that are all that worthwhile. If you've got the Arrival card, the Barclays Arrival Plus, which is sort of a cash equivalent card. The U.S. Airways, the Legacy card that they can't issue anymore, is a really good one in a lot of ways, but you can't get new accounts with that. And then everything after that is sort of secondary. There's JetBlue stuff, there's some miles and more for Lufthansa, but it starts getting niche pretty quick. And so it'll be really nice to see a new set of cards coming from an issuer that's not Amex, Chase, or Citibank.
Yeah, and once again, it'll be good competition. We'll let Citi and Barclays compete over acquiring new customers, and hopefully that'll mean big sign-up bonuses.
Yeah, definitely a good formula for everybody to win when two banks are issuing the same types of points.
Absolutely. Speaking of AA, there is a promotion right now for buying AA miles. Looking into this is probably something you want to lay off. If you max out the bonus and the promotion, that means you're going to buy like 150,000 miles. It's going to run you
$4,000,
$4,700, and that'll leave you with 235,000 miles, and that brings the cost to a little over 2 cents per mile, and that's it's just not great. Like, this is not something Eric and I are going to do unless you've really got something in mind, unless you've got a business class flight that's scoped out, there's availability. It's just not something you want to, it's not a great deal just to stock up on some miles and hang on to them if you've got a use and you can save some money. But for example, the promotion that they just ended was about 15% cheaper to buy miles. It was down to about 1.7 cents per mile, and this one's north of 2. So not super attractive. Figured we would cover that just to let you know not to buy into the hype unless you really know what the hell you're doing.
Yeah, couldn't possibly agree more. There's certainly a couple of scenarios where it makes sense if you're going to buy a business class ticket. But if you can afford to wait, I would guess that we're going to see a better offer sometime in the future. At the very least, an offer that is the same in terms of price per point, but requires you to buy fewer miles to get the full bonus. Because this one, the sort of the top tier, you really have to buy a lot of miles.
If you are going to go for this promotion, you can get 3x points on the purchase of miles. So if you max it out at $4,700, you'd get 13,000 some points if you purchase them with your Amex Gold, Business, City Premier, City Prestige, or Thank You card, because that would qualify as a 3x points purchase.
And it's rare. Most of the other airlines don't sell points through their own processing. So in other words, like they'll sell them through points.com where you're just getting 1x because they're not coded as an airline. But American sells their own points. So if you have a card that gets 2x on travel, you're going to get 2x. If you've got one of the cards like AJ mentioned that gets 3x on airfare, you're going to get that bonus. So a little bit of extra value there. We will have the link for the Buy Miles promotion there, and show notes are going to be at abroaders.com/justnews. All right, so let's talk a little bit about Southwest. We mentioned a couple of weeks ago our character builder of getting stranded in New York and driving all the way across to Michigan, taking about 12 hours to drive to Flint, and finally managed to get that compensation sorted out. So to put it in context, Southwest was proactive. They sent an email a couple of days after and said that the miles had been refunded, so didn't have to do anything to get the mileage back, which was about 15,000 Southwest points for each of the tickets that we had from New York to Detroit. But they also gave like a 50% discount on a paid ticket, but it was a super short expiration. I think the timeline to buy the flights was like sometime in early October. So from the time I got the email, it was like maybe a month of time to buy that flight, maybe 2 months, let's say. But what I learned, first of all, it took a really long time to actually get a person that could help. Waited on hold for like an hour, found out that I called the wrong number. Definitely rookie mistake there. Probably could have spent 3 minutes looking up the customer service number instead of just trying to go through the automated system. But the bottom line was that when I did get somebody on the phone, they were super accommodating. They gave us $250 each towards Southwest flights, and the vouchers that they gave us were really flexible in comparison to stuff I've been offered by Delta and American that have all these restrictions. It has to be this type of ticket, purchase this far in advance. This one is just basically like a gift card. So not only do we get $250 each, but we don't have to use it all in one flight. We've got this gift card that's going to last for 1 year. And the person that I talked to on the phone also said that they'd be happy to extend it. So if you did get caught up in that Southwest thing, I know this was not an incident that was isolated to you and I, AJ. So if you sort of have settled so far for whatever Southwest sent you by email, definitely give them a call. I do still have the number here, so I'll make sure that gets into the show notes so you don't spend a whole bunch of time on hold finding out that they're not able to do customer service with whatever that phone number was. But it worked out okay.
Yeah, that's. I'm pleased with what they offered us. I mean, that's, I think, pretty legit. Especially $250 on Southwest. I mean, Southwest flights aren't that expensive, so that can be you could fly to LA for that, depending on the pricing from the East Coast.
It'll be interesting to see if we can combine that 50% discount too, because if we can get 50% off while using those, it's effectively $1,000 discount if you do it right.
Yeah, that's a good point. And this is actually what Eric just shared about giving a call to see if you could get a little bit more than what they offer. This is relevant right now for anyone that had a Delta flight within the last couple days.
Ooh, yeah, I heard about that.
Because Delta just had a massive snafu, like system wide. They had some power outage. I have no idea how a power outage could have caused all the issues they had, but everything, their entire system went down. Their app wasn't working. I mean, everything got screwed up. Hundreds of flights got messed up. So if you're one of these people, and the CEO sent out like a video message on Facebook, and this is going to affect Delta passengers for a couple more days. So if you had anything get screwed up, I think Delta made some statement they're going to do something, but don't be shy to give them a call and tell them as to why you were really affected by that and see if they're willing to play ball and give you something more.
Yep. All right. So next up, I wanted to just take a second and talk through our strategy for getting down to Colombia. Colombia is one of those places that is sometimes an arbitrage opportunity because it's in the northern zone of South America, which a lot of airlines don't consider, or a lot of frequent flyer programs rather, don't consider South America one zone. They've got like everything north of, say, Ecuador is going to be northern South America, which is significantly cheaper. So we looked at a couple of options. I think the American Airlines flights are like roughly 20,000, maybe 15 if you get something off peak. But actually what turned out to be the best, considering these Southwest discounts, is flying from Chicago Midway Airport to Fort Lauderdale, and then combining that. So we're going to do that with a Southwest paid ticket and try and stack that with the 50% off coupon, and then get to Medellin on JetBlue, which I'm really excited to fly JetBlue. I don't think I've ever flown JetBlue, and if I have, it obviously wasn't super memorable, but I've heard really, really good things, and I'm just so happy that it's going to be a one-stop trip. Medellin's not necessarily the biggest airport. There's not a ton of direct flights, but be able to transfer. We've got about a 3-hour stop in Fort Lauderdale, and then going to get a direct flight to Colombia on JetBlue.
Yeah, man, JetBlue is an interesting airline. I can't believe neither of us have flown it. I know we've actually had some customers in the past that have, said they really like JetBlue and they wanted to incorporate JetBlue into their strategy because as far as domestic travel, they preferred it to American United and Delta. So yeah. And not trying to get too far off topic too, but speaking of JetBlue, I really want to try their Mint.
Yes,
Mint
yeah, me
that
too.
looks like a legit domestic business class product.
Yeah, it looks really, really strong, and it seems like they're not only going to have a great product on a lot of new routes, because it looks like they're installing the Mint business class on even more planes. I just read recently that they have sort of put in place a plan to retrofit a bunch of new aircraft with the new Mint business class. And keep in mind, so JetBlue is a partner of American Express, so you can transfer membership rewards points. Now, we're going to be flying in economy down to Colombia, so that's super cheap. I don't think that there's Mint available. I'm definitely going to try and sneak up there and get some pictures, see what it looks like if there is. But that flight was only 9,200 points. So really good deal. And do keep in mind, JetBlue is a transfer partner of Amex membership rewards. You do have to pay a super small tax on transferring points, which isn't the case with the foreign airlines, but applies to JetBlue and Delta with Amex. And make sure you pay that with cash because they offer to let you pay it with points, and it's a crappy deal. But certainly going to be a really worthwhile transfer, spending 9,200 points for the whole trip when you combine the Southwest giveaway that we got.
Yeah, that's a dynamite redemption, man. We've had a couple of negotiations recently with a couple of cards, man. You wanna share your experience?
Yeah, so I guess to start, I sort of fell asleep at the wheel on a couple of annual fees, and it's definitely easy to do when you've got 30 plus credit cards. So for those of you that are sort of aggressively going after sign up bonuses, do keep tabs, and it's one of the things I'm super excited about the app being able to help us deliver and help us help other people make sure that they stay on top of these negotiations. I ended up missing the window to claim the annual fee or to dispute it. So Barclays gives 60 days after the annual fee post. And that's one thing I think we get a lot of questions about that. And a lot of people think that if the annual fee was charged, they're out of luck. I knew it was charged in May and had tons of time to just take 10 minutes and make a phone call. And I ended up calling 2 days after that window expired. So wasn't able to get the annual fee waived. But that being said, the Barclays card is actually pretty valuable. We've got a decent number of points, and that's one of those currencies where if I had closed the card to avoid the annual fee, it was going to negate or get rid of a decent number of points, like maybe 8,000 or 9,000 points. So it's like $90 right there. So anyways, lost that battle. Lesson learned, make sure you get on those right away, or at least within the first 60 days. Also did a negotiation with our United Mileage Plus business account. And that one it's been sort of rare for me to not have success with Chase. They've done a really nice job of waiving fees. A lot of times I do have to get transferred over and talk to a supervisor. The frontline person's not able to help. But in this case, they weren't able to waive the fee. They weren't willing to give away any bonus miles. There just weren't any promotions that were available to attach to our account. And so I wanted to bring this up because it does happen sometimes that you can't get a fee waived. And so typically, if you want to avoid the annual fee, you need to close down that card. But it's important before you do that you see if you can save that line of credit. Because credit utilization is a big part of your credit score. It's 30%. It's the second most important thing. And so we had about $5,500 worth of credit on the business card. And I was able to get actually $5,200 of that credit line moved over to our Chase Inc. account. So basically only lost $300 worth of credit, was able to close out the account, save the annual fee, and get a bunch of that credit transferred over so that it's still helping our credit score and keeping everything nice and healthy.
That is pretty slick, man. Speaking of Chase, and Chase can transfer to United, we've got some news with United, and there's kind of two stories here. There is what United is going to tell you about these improvements for you, and then there is what is actually happening. So I guess a really brief, United has changed some of their rules as to some of the heyday stuff, stopovers, round the world trips. They're changing the terminology on that. It's now going to be called an excursion pack. But you want to dive into some of these changes that they've made?
Yeah. Well, first of all, so if you're hearing this anytime close to the date the show is released, you've got plenty of time to take action. So first of all, let's talk for a second about what currently exists with the United Frequent Flyer program and why there is such an awesome deal compared to some of the other programs. So
yeah. So this is something that we've done in the past. So United was the only major program to allow you essentially a round the world trip with a stopover and an open jaw. So the classic example that Eric and I did and a lot of Broader's clients have done is to go from the United States to Asia, but you're going to stop in Europe. You're going to use your stopover there. So, for example, from Detroit to Munich, stopover in Munich during Oktoberfest, hang out in Europe for a couple of weeks, then fly to Bangkok for our conference, and then open jaw home out of Saigon. So that's the current opportunity with United on a de facto around the world itinerary that, as far as mileage is concerned, just counts like if you went to Asia and back. So
exactly,
going
same
from
round
Detroit
trip
to Bangkok
price.
Back to Detroit is the same as going from Detroit to Munich, stop over Bangkok, buy a $50 flight on some bogus airline in Asia, and fly home from Saigon.
Yeah, definitely not the most luxurious flight on what was it, Air Asia, I think it was.
Yeah, that's
the
a big
old
player.
airport that's fallen apart in North Bangkok. However, amazing deal, and this is not limited to stopping in Europe on the way to Asia. The rules as they stand now, and as they will continue to stand through October 6th, are that you can have a stopover and an open jaw on a round trip ticket. So this doesn't work with one way. So you got to have enough points in your either United account or enough points that you can transfer in from Chase to be able to get to that minimum. And right now it's basically 60 to 70,000 points for any region in the world. Now, the price of the ticket is determined by some kind of crazy rules that we'll get into in a lot more detail on an upcoming show. But if you've got 60 to 70,000 points, this is on the table. I know Fabio, who's our mentor and one of our investors, actually just booked a flight that takes really nice advantage of this as well. So just to give another example of how this could work, Fabio is based in Sao Paulo, Brazil, and he's taking his wife and his daughter, and they're going up to Disneyland. So they're going to go to Orlando. That's their stopover. Their destination is San Francisco. And so they're going to spend some time there. And then their open jaw home is from Honolulu. So they're going to spend some time in Hawaii as well and then head back to Sao Paulo. And this is another one that won't be possible after October 6th because essentially Hawaii on United's chart is a different region than the rest of the U.S. So Hawaii is just kind of out there on its own, and reasonably so. It's about halfway across the Pacific. But so I think what Fabio is going to end up doing, he was actually just talking to me earlier today about what the best strategy might be to go from San Francisco to Honolulu. But that's the only part of the travel that he's got to cover. The rest of it is all wrapped into that United ticket. And I think he's probably going to be using British Airways if he can find availability on Alaska. Or we were also talking, there's actually some really good deals if you use Singapore to book a flight on United. San Francisco is a United hub, so there's a lot of routes with that. And it's, I think, 17,500 miles for a one-way using Singapore miles, whereas it would be about 25,000 miles in economy if you're using United points or most other Star Alliance carriers. So some good opportunities there, and there's tons of other things that you can use this stopover rule. So I think that's probably a good place to leave it for today. A little bit of a cliffhanger, and we can come back and dive into all the details. But if you're super excited about getting this taken care of and want to make sure you get the ticket booked in advance, the deadline is October 6th. After that, all these nasty changes are going to kick in.
Yeah, I mean, also the moral of the story is, I mean, we didn't know when this was going to happen, but we could have imagined that this was going to happen. Anytime there's a major program that offers you something way better than any other program offers you, it typically is going to come to an end, and they're going to get in line with the other airlines, and there will be a little bit of parity. This is just kind of the way it works.
Yep. All right. So before we wrap it up, there's one other thing. This is sort of a little bit of bright news, and that is that Air Berlin just announced a bunch of new routes to the United States. And if you follow any of the frequent flyer blogs or written content out there, a lot of people are talking about this. In particular, when new routes open up, there's often a nice little window before everybody sort of catches on to what's happening where you can get a lot more availability. And so it looks like most of these routes are starting next May. So the timeline is a little far out, but it is within the booking window for most of the frequent flyer programs. So I think probably if you're looking at business class, I've seen a lot of reports that many of these routes have at least 2 seats in business class. So it's a good opportunity to be able to travel together. And it's tough to get to Europe and not pay those fuel surcharges with One World miles. So typically you're looking at either using American miles or British Airways miles to get across the pond. And most of the flights are going through London. You've got big taxes on fuel and all this other stuff. It can make your free ticket end up costing anywhere from $600 to $800 out of pocket. So if you fly with Air Berlin, if they're operating the flight, you get to skip all those charges. And I think taxes and fees are going to run like roughly $100 for those flights. So there's a huge savings opportunity if you can find availability that works.
Yeah, that's really good stuff, man. I've got one more thing I wanted to share. It's an Airbnb experience that we have had with Medellin. So opted to go through Airbnb just to save some time. I'm sure we could have gotten maybe a better deal just by wandering around. But after the Barcelona experience, just wanted to tie, just
you didn't want to get another speed walking marathon under your belt?
Yeah, just wanted to close the loop. So here's something that I did not know about Airbnb long-term rentals. Previously, I was under the impression that if you booked a place for, say, 4 months, like we are, that you had to pay up front. And I did not realize that Airbnb bills this as if they are your landlord, and they bill your credit card each month for the agreed upon price. So that's really nice for a personal cash flow situation. That can be a big difference if you're talking about staying in a place 3 to 6 months, an extra, $5,000 or whatever that you don't have to put up front. And another thing that I would like to urge everyone to attempt with Airbnb, the longer that your stay is you can negotiate. I mean, it's not the most reasonable thing to stay in a place one night and expect them to give you something special, but it's, pretty standard business practice if you're going to buy more from somebody, aka staying longer, that maybe they can wiggle a little bit on the price. And we've got a really, really, really nice place lined up that was retailing at over $1,800 a month, and we talked them down to $1,200 a month. So over the duration of the stay, we're talking about 600. We're talking about like $2,500 we're going to save for how long we're staying there, just for asking, just for proposing, saying.
Yeah, and you really didn't have to hold their feet to the fire over this one either. I mean,
no, it was a simple proposal. There was no hardcore negotiation. I said, hey, if we're going to commit to staying longer than a month, what do you think is fair? And then they just asked me what I thought was fair, and then I told them $1,200 a month seems reasonable, and that's a $600 discount. But I also
that good old Tim Ferriss strategy. Does it sound unreasonable to you?
Yeah, exactly. Another thing too for Airbnb negotiations is look at their calendar. It's so great for the user. You can see when their place is booked, and I saw that they didn't have shit booked because it was a newer listing. And so I'm like, hey, like looks like you got a lot of availability. Wouldn't it be nice to just guarantee much more money than you pay for the place? I'm sure, and just lock it up now so you don't have to worry about messaging back and forth with people over 2-night stays and coming in and cleaning the place. So bam, like that, got a pretty big discount.
Yeah, awesome work on that. I'm super excited to get down to Colombia. Won't be very long. I think we got one more show here in the U.S., and then after that, we're going to be checking in from Medellin.
Man, absolutely excited to get back and hang out with the Pisos, drink some aguardiente, that kind of bogus rum
that horrible liquor. Oh man, yeah, I had managed to put that out of my head, so that's a good one.
I'm sure you'll be having some when we get back there.
I definitely will. All right, well, that'll do it for this week's show. A few links from the content we went over today. We've got them at abroaders.com/justnews. Thank you so much for being with us. By the way, if you are looking to get started with the United ticket right away, it's there's enough time, but it's certainly the case that as these things get closer, it gets harder and harder to book. More people on the phone lines, and it is true that sometimes these tickets can be a little bit complicated. So if you'd like some help, reach out to us. We have just finished inviting the whole group of beta testers for the Abroaders app, and so we wanted to open up the app to you guys. So if you're interested, you missed out on the beta list, head over to abroaders.com, and if you check out the show notes, we'll have a link right there to sign up as well. Get in there and put in your travel plans, and make sure to let us know if you have Chase or United points, and we will do everything we can to help you get that ticket booked. If you want to book it yourself, we've got some great resources, and I'm excited to share those. And also make sure to check in next week, because we're going to dive into a bunch more detail about what's changing and what you can do to make your miles more valuable before it happens.
Really good stuff, man.
All right. That'll do it for us. Thanks so much for being with us. Hey, Broaders, don't be shy. Hop over to the website and join our email list for exclusive travel hacking content. If you like what we're up to, the best way you can support the show is by leaving us a 5-star review on iTunes. Lastly, we would love to hear from you, so send your show feedback to Eric or